So Watford have now been promoted and the top 6 is now confirmed. Loads of talking points to go over. Let's jump into it. Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Championship Roundup. We had an action-packed weekend of Championship football, of which we're going to be discussing in today's video. Now, we do have one midweek game to go ahead and predict at the end of the video, so do leave that in the comments down below. As always, if you do go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. If we get 250 likes, that would be massively appreciated. Check out the Patreon as well, link to that is down below. Also, I don't have the prediction leagues ready just yet, but don't worry, keep your eyes peeled on the community tab. They'll be going up on there later on. But without any further ado, let's talk about these games. Starting out with the first game on Saturday, we had Bournemouth going up against Brentford. Brentford walking away with all 3 points, getting back to winning ways and putting an end to this amazing winning run that Bournemouth themselves had been on. From Bournemouth's point of view, the tempo had dropped off quite significantly compared to some of their other previous performances. It looked like at this point they probably accepted that the playoffs will be their fate, which it now will. We've now got the 4 teams confirmed for the playoffs with automatic promotion no longer being a viable option, with Watford now being promoted. Now, Brentford throughout the afternoon were probably the better side in this one. They were creating the more clear-cut chances. Ivan Toney had one unbelievable one-on-one which he couldn't manage to get past Begovic, but the red card possibly could have been a bit of a turning point when Janssen sort of had a bit of a tangling with Danjuma, bringing in him down, picking up his second yellow card. But even after that, it was still Brentford looking the much more dangerous side. I mean, you can see by the match stats to the side of me the sort of lack of chances that Bournemouth actually created in this game. I know that they did rest a couple of players, but even so, their standard of performance wasn't quite up there. In the end, it was a lovely goal by Brentford. Great pass from Norgard, takes about 4 Bournemouth defenders at the game, gets his ball into Toney. His shot eventually is deflected back into Mbima, who finishes it off. And I mean, this could be a repeat of what we're actually seeing in the Championship playoffs this season. What I want to know from you guys is, who do you most and least want to play in the playoffs this season if you do support one of those clubs? Because yeah, each side I think has their strengths and weaknesses at the moment, don't they? Next up then to another one of the top 6 sides, we had Barnsley beating Rotherham 1-0 with a little bit of controversy in this game, I think it's fair to say, especially with the opening and only goal of the game. In the end, it was Morris who took this one away for Barnsley. However, was there a foul on the goalkeeper here? I think there was. I think that I'm actually baffled that the referee didn't give this one as a foul, with the amount of protection that goalkeepers usually get. You know, referees generally give the goalkeeper the benefit of the doubt here, but I think that when you watch the replay, especially behind the goal when it's slowed down, you can see that Morris's arm makes connection with the goalkeeper's head before he actually gets his head to it. You know, some people might say, okay, Morris has just out-jumped the goalkeeper. His arm influences that going on the goalkeeper first, and so I think it should have been given as a foul. And Rotherham, other than that, I mean, they gave a really good account of themselves in this game, and it was another example of them losing a game with such small margins. Statistically, Rotherham created 4 big chances in this game and failed to take any of them. They had some wonderful opportunities, balls coming into the box, and they really put Barnsley under the cosh in this one, but nothing has come of it ultimately. And, you know, Derby, who are currently sitting above the relegation zone at the moment, who also lost this weekend, will be thinking, oh my god, we've got away with one there, with Rotherham not making up ground on them. Because, yeah, it's going to be these sort of games at the end of the season that Rotherham look back on and think, we could have really done something there. Next up then, we have Blackburn 5, Huddersfield 2. This is the sort of standard that I think a lot of people were expecting Blackburn to reach sort of every week. And I'm not saying I expected them to score 5 goals every week, but in terms of some of their attacking play and link-up and stuff like this. But, I mean, Huddersfield really didn't help themselves defensively. I mean, the first goal sort of set the tone, which came from the corner. Schofield makes a bit of a mess from it, but no sort of leadership or anyone taking control of that back line from Huddersfield. And we've sort of seen this from them a few times this season. Huddersfield have been a bit more guilty of these sort of like 5-0 hammerings than some other clubs that we've seen so far this season, and they'll be happy that they've got 47 points on the board at this point in time, because yeah, really shoddy stuff from them defensively. What I do find a little bit still surprising is the rumblings coming out of Blackburn is that Tony Mowbray will still be the manager there next season. I really thought that naturally at the end of this season it might be the time that each of them just, you know, part their separate ways, but at the moment it seems like Mowbray will be there to stay. But this is the sort of performance that Blackburn fans want to be seeing more in, because it doesn't ultimately take away from their form in 2021 still being incredibly poor. The only real positive for Huddersfield in this game was Josh Koroma really looked back to his best. You know, I think only making his second start of 2021. That sort of dynamic attacker that he is, really showing what Huddersfield have missed lately in those forward areas. Did really well for their first goal and took his goal superbly well. So yeah, hopefully next season gets a full year injury free, and I mean, no doubt he'll absolutely rip it up at this level. I actually think there'll be quite a bit of interest in him over the summer. But yeah, much better from Blackburn in this one. After that, we then had Cardiff beating Wycombe by 2-1, which all but goes to relegate Wycombe. They need to be a pretty big miracle from here on in. They can only survive on goal difference now, and there'd need to be a goal difference swing of 13 goals for them to survive over Derby. So it looks like that's it for Wycombe. But you got to respect the job that Gareth Ainsworth's done there. It was always going to be a bit of an impossible job coming into this season with the sort of budget in the squad that Wycombe were coming with. But one of the things that I think is most respectable about Ainsworth and how he sort of dealt this season with Wycombe is that he's never sort of let negativity fester or breed within that Wycombe squad. He's always been very upbeat in his press conferences after the game and things like that. And even after this game, spoke about their chances, getting bouncing back at the first time of asking next season. So yeah, a lot to respect about Gareth Ainsworth and the job that he's done there at Wycombe. In terms of the game, Cardiff just had too much for Wycombe going forward in this one. Kiefer Moore with a couple of goals. The first goal all brilliantly taken. I think what sort of sets Kiefer Moore apart from some of the other more traditional target men in the league is actually his mobility. He glides past some Wycombe defenders for the first goal, sticks it away. Wycombe get back into it with a penalty, but Kiefer Moore ultimately finishes them off. Will Vokes has quite potentially one of the shortest cameos of Championship history, being brought on in the 94th minute and red carded in the 95th. But yeah, in the end, Cardiff do get over the line, and for Wycombe, looks like this season will just be one step too far. Next up then, we had North End beating Coventry by 1-0. In the end, probably not the most sort of entertaining game of the weekend. It did have a sort of end of season feel to it, a little bit flat from each side, but first half there were chances each way. Each goalkeeper was being kept on their toes. Biamo missed an unbelievable chance for Coventry to take the lead, a bit of a gilt-edged one really, after a really nice ball was hooked in, but Everson kept on his toes for North End, and the more sort of unbelievable performances that Everson has in the North End shirt, the less confident I am that we'll be able to get him back on board for next season, whether that is on loan or a permanent. I mean, it probably will be a loan. I don't see us getting him on the permanent deal, but yeah, another terrific game from him. And even Wilson in net for Coventry, we tested him a couple of times. Ledson went quite close with a speculative effort. In the end, it was Wilson who made the mistake for the penalty. It was a long ball which went over from Everson. Ched Evans just gets the wrong side of the goalkeeper, and as soon as he puts his hand on Evans, Evans is always going down in that situation. Brown tucks away the penalty, and ultimately North End get the 3 points. But yeah, quite fine margins in the end. Coventry had their chances, but like I just said, a little bit flat. Next up then, we had Birmingham 2, Derby 1, and a really damning result in Derby's season here, who have been absolutely woeful recently, losing their last 5 championship matches. This is now their worst run of form since 2011. If we read off some of the stats of this current run of form, it's now 1 win in their last 13 games, 6 points picked up from the last 39 which have been available to them. And I mean, in some ways Derby are getting unbelievably lucky here, because this is relegation form and they're still not in the bottom 3 because none of the sides below them have been able to take advantage of this awful run of form recently. Obviously Rotherham still have the 2 games in hand on them, so Derby is still in the perilous position of Rotherham winning those games, but how likely that is at the moment I'm not so sure. But I mean, Derby got off to a decent start in this game. The first goal score was actually quite a nicely worked goal. Wycombe with the flicker into Buchanan, his ball back into Kazim Richards, who slotted it away nicely. But Birmingham in the second half, Derby were hanging on at times. The more I see of Birmingham under Lee Bowyer, the more you sort of look back on the end of this side under Aitor Karanka and think just how wrong Karanka was actually getting things. It's not fully utilised. Lucas Djukovic, who's been unbelievable since Bowyer's come in. The first goal coming from the long throw in which Derby failed to defend, and then the second goal coming when Birmingham had been previously really been knocking on the door for getting that second goal. Halilovic went quite close, hitting the post, and ultimately it's just another indication of this sort of weak mentality that Derby seem to have at the moment when they are put into pressing positions. But Rooney now is under immense pressure, and I mean, managers have been sacked for far less than this current run that Derby are on. Next up then to one of the sides who's not been taking advantage recently, Sheffield Wednesday. They were beaten 3-1 by Middlesbrough in this one. It was Borough who took the lead. Really nicely worked from Balassi this one. I'd love it if Borough do get him back for next season. I think that lately especially he's really been showing his worth to this side. Cabana as well, who set up the second goal for Borough, but Wednesday did get back into it before half time. Windass from the penalty spot made it 1-1, but 2 Borough goals in the second half ultimately sealed it up for them. Now for Sheffield Wednesday and the survival picture, they're left in the position with 2 games to go. If they lose either of their last 2, they will be relegated. Next up is against Forest, where I think they really need to win that one at Hillsborough, which could potentially set up an incredible final day where it's Derby against Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously Rotherham are the other team in this picture who are still the sort of curveball at the moment with their games in hand. We'll wait to see how they do with their initial one, and they're against Brentford in this midweek. So yeah, still a lot to play for at the bottom, but Wednesday really could have done with some points in that one, couldn't they? Next up then to the City Ground, we had Forest drawing 1-1 with Stoke, one of the games this weekend which I managed to call. First off, Forest didn't really get out of the blocks. It was Stoke who opened the scoring in a fairly non-eventful first off. Really, there weren't really chances flying for either way, but nice goal taken by Stoke here. Lovely run by Matondo, breaking from midfield, and timing actually picks him out really well for Stoke to go in 1-0 at half time. Like I say, there was a bit of an improvement in the second half with Forest. The goal in the end comes from Knockout's ball in. There's a bit of a mix-up between, I think it was Smith and Bath at the back for Stoke, and Graben in the end gets his goal to make it 1-1. Forest had a couple of other chances in that second half, but ultimately the game finished as a draw. Each side now confirmed for the Championship next season as well. Each of them will be hoping to improve on their finish this time round. And actually, Forest's next game is up against Sheffield Wednesday, so they could have quite the hand to play in whether Derby are getting relegated this season, which is going to be an interesting game. But yeah, finishing as a draw in the end, probably a fair result. After that, we go to QPR 1, Norwich 3, another one this weekend, which I managed to correctly predict. I didn't have a bad one this time round for score predictions. But like we sort of mentioned in the preview for this one, Norwich were just looking really ruthless going forward. But QPR definitely gave a good go of this one. Norwich take the lead after 32 minutes from Quintia after putting the pressure on. Bit of a rare mistake this time from Sene Dieng, who originally looked to get behind the ball, that it just squirms past him to make it 1-0 to Norwich. In the second half, QPR did give a real good go to get back into this one. They obviously missed a penalty. Tim Krul doing what he does best, leaves that foot in the middle to cover that eventuality and say as well. The Aaron's goal was lovely, brilliant ball in from Kenny McLean with that left foot, and Aaron's takes his goal wonderfully well. Dax does get the goal for QPR, and they really should have made it 2-2. Charlie Austin missed a gilt-edged chance with his head, which went over the bar in the end. That should have been 2-2, and in the end Norwich obviously make it 3. Buendia wrapping things up. So yeah, Norwich are very much back to their attacking best in this one. Look like they're gonna seal the title. Only a couple more points needed for that one, and in the end they just had too much for this QPR side going forward. And then we had Watford beating Millwall by 1-0 to seal their promotion back up to the Premier League at the first time of asking. So congratulations to all the Watford fans. In terms of the game itself, it was a Sarr penalty which went on to be the only goal of the game, but probably not Watford's most sparkling performance of the season so far. I actually thought that on reflection of the full 90 minutes, Millwall probably deserved to get something from this one, to be honest with you. You know, there were spells where Millwall really were on top, but what it highlighted was Daniel Bachmann again, you know, fantastic in net for Watford, and he's been someone who's really grasped at an opportunity, you know, at the point when Ben Foster got injured, to really, you know, stake a claim down for being Watford's #1 this season. But yeah, Watford in this season overall, it's been a really interesting one, how they've gone from Vladimir Ivic, who was this very sort of like regimented, quite disciplinarian, it seemed like from the outside looking in, quite defensive football under him. They obviously went away from that into Ziska, who was like, you know, pretty much the opposite, you know, a little bit more, seemed a bit more lovable with the players and stuff like that, getting them playing on the front foot. But it's interesting how they've sort of worked off each other in that aspect. But yeah, Watford are back up in the Premier League now, and it'll be interesting to see how they readapt themselves back up to Premier League life, actually. I think there was always the feeling that Watford coming down into the Championship this season with this group of players, that bounce back was always on the card. You know, I think I predicted them to win the league this season, just with the sheer amount of quality that's bedded in throughout this side. But yeah, it's a great achievement nonetheless, especially at a time when it looked, you know, around the start of the season that they may not go on to get promoted. So yeah, to get over the line with a couple of games to go, big achievement there from Watford. Into Sunday's games, we then had Reading against Swansea, playing out a 2-2 draw, thus confirming Swansea's playoff place, and does mean that Reading can no longer make the top 6. Reading fans, would be really interested to get your overall verdict on this season in the comments down below, because I think that, I mean, judging off, if we take last season as an isolated case study compared to this season, obviously it's been a drastic improvement in proceedings, but with the way the season's ended, there is that underlying feeling of disappointment considering the position that Reading got themselves into. What's also the worry with Reading is that they don't go ahead and really build on this next season. You know, there does feel like there may be a little bit of change going on within that squad, but if they do manage to build on the foundations that were set for this season, who knows what they could go on to achieve. But yeah, in terms of the game itself, Reading actually got off to a really good start in this one, Mate, with the opening goal. The game-changing moment comes when Ayew's brought on for Swansea. He's going to be such an influential player for them in the playoffs that if Swansea are going to do absolutely anything in the playoffs, Ayew's going to be absolutely central to that. So yeah, these last 2 games of the season, wouldn't be surprised if Swansea ended up resting him. It's Lowe who gets the equaliser, and then Ayew who puts them in front. SU does get Reading back into it, but obviously the point in the end wasn't enough for Reading. And then to wrap things off, we had Bristol City 2, Luton Town 3. As if Bristol City's abysmal home record couldn't get any worse. They got themselves into the perfect position at half-time, winning 2-0 thanks to goals from Wells and Adam Nadge. But then in the second half, there was an absolute capitulation. And fair play to Luton for having that sort of never-say-die attitude, which has been present for them all season. Then goals ultimately wrapped things up. Harry Cornick wrapping things up, actually, with his first goal of the season. Couldn't believe that he's only bagged one this season. His goal return was fairly decent last season. I think he got about 9, but I know that he's chipped in with assists in other ways this season. But nevertheless, if this doesn't go to really hammer home some of the issues that Bristol City have within their squad, I don't know what will. It was interesting reading Nigel Pearson and some of his comments after the game, what he thought of it all. But he's got a massive job on his hands with this Bristol City squad, because there are issues that run quite deep with them at the moment, you feel like. But guys, there were all the matches that took place in the Championship over this weekend. As always, get your thoughts in the comments down below in terms of what you guys made of your team's performance this weekend. What we'll now go ahead and do is predict the only midweek game that we've got going on in the Championship in midweek, so do leave this one in the comments down below. So heading into the only game that we got to predict in midweek, it's Brentford going up against Rotherham, and a tough one to call. Brentford I thought looked quite good over the weekend in their 1-0 win over Bournemouth. Rotherham, like we mentioned before, I thought got really unlucky with that decision that went against them, and actually missing some real gilt-edged chances. A point wouldn't be the worst result in the world here for Rotherham, because it would still set them up in the platform with still one game in hand to catch up to Derby, which they wouldn't then need to win. But it's a tough one. I think this is going to be such a tight game as well. I am going to go 1-0 Brentford. I think they may just scrape this one, but Rotherham just haven't had that luck falling their way recently, have they? So I'll go 1-0 Brentford. Let me know down below how you guys see that one finish here. But guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. So if you did go on to enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. As always, get your thoughts in the comments down below and get your one score prediction in there as well. Do stay tuned and subscribe for some regular Championship content. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.